I have a few senior personnel appointments for you, which may be of interest. The Secretary General is appointing Stephanie Williams of the United States as his special advisor on Libya. She will lead good offices and mediation efforts and engagements with Libyan regional and international stakeholders to pursue implementation of the three intra-Libyan dialogue tracks. That's the political, the security, and the economic, and as well as support the holding of presidential and parliamentary elections in Libya. Ms. Williams, as you know, has extensive experience in diplomacy and foreign security policy, and of course in Libya. The Secretary General is also appointing Baysolu Nyanti of Liberia as his new Deputy Special Representative in the UN mission in South Sudan, or UNMISS, and Resident Coordinator in South Sudan. Ms. Nyanti will also serve as the Humanitarian Coordinator. Ms. Nyanti succeeds Alain Nudehu of Benin, to whom the Secretary General is grateful for his leadership and dedicated commitment to the people of South Sudan. The biographies of both are available as well. And I've been asked by some of you for our reaction to the sentencing of Aung San Suu Kyi in Myanmar, and I'm sure you will have seen the statements made by the High Commissioner for Human Rights, Michelle Bachelet, condemning that verdict. For his part, the Secretary General reiterates his condemnation of the military takeover on February 1st and repeats the call for an immediate end to the violence and repression, and for the respect of human rights, and for the immediate release of all political prisoners in Myanmar. As you know, the Universal Declaration of Human Rights enshrines the principles of equality before the law, the presumption of innocence, the right to a fair and public hearing by an independent and impartial tribunal, and all of the guarantees necessary for a person's defense. Also on Myanmar, the Secretary General condemns in the strongest terms yesterday's killing and injuring of a number of unarmed civilians by security forces in Yangon when a vehicle rammed into protesters who were fired upon with live ammunition. The killing of peaceful demonstrators violates the fundamental human rights, freedom of expression, and the rights of peaceful assembly, and is a clear defiance of calls by the Security Council for restraint and dialogue. The violence against civilians must stop and the perpetrators held accountable. To date, more than 1,300 women, children, and men have lost their lives in Myanmar since the takeover of the government by the military on February 1st. We reiterate our call for the military to refrain from violence and repression and for a return to Myanmar's democratic path. Also expressing deep concern over yesterday's attack on unarmed civilians was the acting resident coordinator in Myanmar, Ramanthan Balakrishnan. He stressed in a statement that the freedom of expression is a fundamental human right, and the actions by security forces are completely unacceptable. Turning to Afghanistan, our humanitarian colleagues report that the provision of winterization assistance continues across the country. Last week, more than 81,000 people received winterization assistance in Nangarhar, Kunar and Nuristan provinces. Some 284,500 people received relief and food assistance. About 46,000 people in Paktya and Kabul provinces were reached with cash assistance. Meanwhile, WHO provided essential medicine items in Nangarhar Province, and yesterday the Office for the Coordination of Humanitarian Affairs and UNHCR undertook a road mission to visit a distribution site and assess additional needs, including health, water and sanitation, and hygiene services. Turning to back here to the Security Council, where Council members heard from Bintou Ketia, the head of the Peacekeeping Mission in the Democratic Republic of the Congo, and the Secretary General's Special Representative there. She began her briefing by noting the ongoing military operation by Uganda and Congolese forces against the ADF. She emphasized the mission's advocacy to put in place cooperation mechanisms in the context of these operations to ensure the security of UN peacekeepers, but of course also civilians. Turning to the illegal exploitation of natural resources, which she described as a major driver of conflict in the country, Ms. Keita says she's encouraged by the government's efforts to reform the mining sector. And as the country looks ahead to elections next year, Ms. Keita urged all political stakeholders to focus on taking forward the key reforms needed to consolidate the hard-won stabilization gains achieved so far and to overcome continuing challenges, particularly in the eastern part of the DRC. And in the neighboring Central African Republic, our UN peacekeepers are continuing to patrol the town of Congo in the country's south, following violence there last week by combatants associated with the UPC armed group. Close to 1,500 people have sought refuge around the UN temporary base. On Thursday, while Congo was under attack, the mission deployed helicopter reinforcements to help peacekeepers already on location. This intervention, as well as UN support to the Central African Army, forced the combatants to flee. The mission condemns the attack and calls on the UPC and all armed groups to immediately end violence and to respect the ceasefire, as well as their commitments under the peace agreement. And you will have seen we issued a statement yesterday on Mali, where the Secretary General condemned the attack perpetrated against civilians on Friday afternoon near the village of Songho in central Mali. Reportedly 30 civilians were killed and several wounded, and we dispatched peacekeepers to the area. Finally, last peacekeeping note, a senior UN delegation arrived in Seoul ahead of the 2021 UN Peacekeeping Ministerial meeting, which begins tomorrow. Jean-Pierre Lacroix, Atul Khare, and Catherine Pollard, respectively, the heads of the UNO Peace Operations, Department of Operational Support, as well as the Department of Management, Strategy, Policy, and Compliance, will all three take part in this two-day event hosted virtually by the Republic of Korea. More than 100 member states and intergovernmental organizations are expected to affirm their support to UN peacekeeping and pledge resources to strengthen peacekeeping. This year, member states have asked to close the capability gap in peacekeeping through concrete pledges to align with the action for peacekeeping and priorities, the strategy to strengthen peacekeepers' work on the ground. For those of you who are early risers, the event will be webcast at 5:30 a.m. tomorrow morning. It will be recorded, so Benno can watch it later when he wakes up on his terrace. Yeah, 10 a.m., yes. Quick COVID update from Botswana. With cases of Omicron variant detected in Botswana, the UN team, led by resident coordinator Zia Chowdhury, is increasing its support for the government's response. We're helping to enhance Botswana's capacity to diagnose and treat the virus by providing medical and protective equipment. UNICEF is providing risk communication support on health and safety measures, increasing access to education, and providing medical and nutrition support for vulnerable children. Of the nearly 2 million vaccine doses delivered to Botswana, more than 700,000 came through COVAX. Botswana has achieved WHO's target for vaccinating 40% of its population by this month. As of the 29th of November, 75% in the country have received at least one dose, while 68% are fully vaccinated. In a statement we issued over the weekend, the Secretary General welcomed the successful conclusion of the second session of the Conference on the Establishment of a Middle East Zone Free of Nuclear Weapons and Other Weapons of Mass Destruction. The session ended on Friday. He congratulated the participating states of the conference and their constructive engagement to the decision to establish a working committee to continue deliberations during the intersessional period. And this afternoon, the Secretary General will speak at the General Assembly session to honor the late High Representative for the Alliance of Civilization, Jorge Sampaio. The Secretary General will say that Portugal lost an extraordinary leader and one of the country's best, and he will mention the work that Mr. Sampaio did for the Alliance of Civilizations to promote preventive diplomacy and build bridges of dialogue and understanding between cultures and religion. And at 2:45 this afternoon, the Crown Prince Haakon of Norway will brief you at the Security Council stakeout ahead of the Council's ARIA formula meeting on the protection of education in conflict. I will end on positive news, at least for us, in the form of full payment to the regular budget. It comes from a member state whose sea coconut, endemic to its island, produces the largest seed in the world and is definitely a place we'd all rather be today on this dark, stormy, cold day. Philippe.
Thank you, Stéphane.
No. What country? Exactly. Seychelles. Perfect. Thank you. And so we thank our friends in the Seychelles whose seat is found in the shell known as the Cook. I'm sorry, the integrity of this quiz show is above all reproach. So anyway, we thank the Seychelles for their payment, which brings us up to 139. All right, Philippe. All right, Philippe started, then we'll go to you, Lenka.
Thank you, Stéphane. A question on Williams and Libya. Where she would be based?
She will be based in Tripoli, and we'll start in the coming days.
So
week.
does that mean that you are not looking anymore for a new special envoy?
At this point, she is the special advisor, and she will lead the work that we are doing ahead of the mission.
And to be precise, does that mean that Antonio Guterres refused the proposal from Mr. Kubish to stay in his function until the end of the election?
I don't think the way I read Mr. Kubish's proposal was that he did not want to leave the mission without senior leadership, and we appreciate the fact that he did not leave immediately, so we'll have a positive transition. Edie.
A follow-up on that. Tenure for Stephanie Williams in this position? Is it basically to get through the electoral period, and perhaps you could give us a little more insight into how the Secretary General talked her into taking this job?
Well, who would not want to have this job? I think, in all seriousness, Miss Williams did a spectacular job when she was in office, and we are delighted that she accepted the offer to return. I'm not aware of any time bound, and if I'm not mistaken, obviously the mandate of the mission will have to be scheduled to be renewed in January. We'll see what architecture Security Council members come up with.
I have another question
Yep.
on Afghanistan. I believe the World Bank has released over, $250 million for humanitarian assistance. Can you tell us what the UN is doing, the broader UN is doing to ensure that that money does not go to the Taliban?
Well, the money, which will part of it will be used by WFP, as you know, goes either directly to buy the necessary supplies, food, and others. As you know, UNDP has also created a program with the Global Fund to pay the salaries of health workers directly. So it is not going through any structures of the de facto authorities. Excuse me, of the de facto authorities in Kabul. Sorry, Lenka, you won, and I passed you over, and for that I apologize.
That's fine. On Myanmar, as the ruling already happened, is the Secretary General considering to contact the junta? And what is the update on the UN's envoy? Has she started working? Thank you.
The new envoy, Nolene Heiser, if I'm not mistaken, starts December 13th. You know, I think you're all very aware of the difficulties of contacts that we've had with the junta. So obviously, Ms. Heiser will take the lead in contacting the authorities in Myanmar. Benno.
I have a follow-up to Libya as well. This position of the special advisor is a new position, so Ms. Williams doesn't follow anybody, right?
That's correct.
Is there the possibility that she will become the next envoy after that time?
The Secretary General has the authority to appoint special advisors, which he has used. As I mentioned to Edie, you know, if the mandate will be is scheduled for renewal, we'll have to see what architecture comes up with. So I just want to focus on this. Miss Williams' role has really been outlined in the announcement that I read, and especially with a focus on getting us in getting the Libyan people and institutions through these elections. Mike, and then we'll go to the screen.
Thank you. On Sudan, there have been mass protests throughout the country in response to the Prime Minister's decision to be with a military-dominated government. What is the UN position on the fact that he's participating within that government?
I think, you know, we've on Sudan, we have, I think we expressed ourselves pretty clearly that there's still actions that we want to see taken. You know, we support Prime Minister Hamdok's efforts to engage with the forces of freedom and change, the different civil society committees, the resistance committees, and other voices within the Sudanese public. We still very much continue to advocate for the immediate release of all those who were arbitrarily detained or arrested since October 25th. There also needs to be full accountability for the human rights violations that were reported, notably against demonstrators and protesters. The agreement that was signed on November 21st for us is really an initial step towards the full restoring of order, of civilian and democratic order, but more needs to be done.
Sorry, just a follow-up, if I may.
Yeah.
What's your position on, is there confidence in the military's reassurance that it's going to get out of government after the election?
Look, I think, you know, we are, I hate to use the expression, it is what it is. We are faced with a situation. We've heard assurances. We are looking for, and we will continue to look for action that will lead to the restoration of the constitutional and democratic order. Before I turn to you, Mr. Klein, I have an appointment for you, not for you, but for everybody, senior appointment, and that is George William Okot Obo of Uganda has been appointed by the Secretary General as his special advisor on the responsibility to protect. Mr. Okot Obo will succeed Karen Smith of South Africa, to whom the Secretary General is deeply grateful. Mr. Okot Obo is currently Assistant Secretary General and Assistant Secretary General and head of the Secretariat of the. Wow, let me try it again. He is currently Assistant Secretary General and Secretary and head of the Secretariat of the Secretary General's high-level panel on internal displacement. Okay. He has had a UN career spanning more than 30 years and has served as Assistant High Commissioner for Operations at UNHCR, among many other positions, and we congratulate him. Sorry, Joe, up to you. And then Carrie.
Yes, thank you. Thank you. On Friday, Israeli Ambassador Erdogan sent the Secretary General a rather scathing letter decrying the discrimination that OCHA was making in statistics that it had published between Israeli civilian citizens and Israeli civilian settlers, such distinction having no basis in international law. So he asked the Secretary General for his response to this, and also the fact that OCHA had misidentified an Israeli civilian who was murdered in Jerusalem by a Hamas-affiliated terrorist as a settler when he actually lived within pre-1967 Israel. So I'm wondering first whether the Secretary General, in fact, did receive the letter and how he would intend to respond. Thank you.
A couple of things. I'm not aware of the letter, which doesn't mean much because I'm not always aware of every letter. But there was a story published along these lines in the Israeli media, which kind of makes the same points you made, notably on the Eli K. What I can tell you is that the article itself conflates a number of issues. There's nothing here that runs contrary to international humanitarian law. What is very clear, needs to be made clear, is that for the UN, Israeli settlers are civilians. Since 2008, OCHA, on behalf of the UN system, has maintained a database which includes the number of Palestinians and Israelis killed or injured in the occupied Palestinian territory and Israel in the context of the occupation and conflict. In doing so, the database categorizes whether the casualty or the perpetrator was known or believed to be a civilian or a combatant. There is no third category. Under the civilian category, there is a subcategory for Israeli settlers, which is necessary because it is part of the context. The UN position is that settlements are illegal under international law. As you know, the Secretary General has been reporting on the key drivers of the conflict for many years, which includes settlers and settlement activity. Because of this context, OCHA and the UN more broadly are asked by member states to report on settler-based violence. Regarding Eli K specifically, OCHA is engaging with the Israeli authorities and will ensure to make any needed correction. It must be clear that in no way does the UN suggest or imply in our reporting or databases that Israeli settlers should be targets for harm. The cycle of violence must be stopped and long overdue peace and security brought to the people of Israel and Palestine. Carrie.
Thank you, Stéphane. What was the main, just a quick follow-up on Libya again. What was the main goal of nominating a special advisor, not going for the special representative right away? Was it to be faster, lighter, to be sure to have somebody there for representing the UN during the elections?
No, we have no mandate to appoint a special representative, right? The latest mandate talks about a special envoy. This appointment of Ms. Williams as a special advisor ensures that we will have the leadership in place during this very critical month of December. Yes.
And if I may follow up, because she already did the job for 10 months, right, last year, practically, like effectively. So would she be a good candidate to go forward as a special envoy then?
Well, I think let's take things one step at a time. But she is definitely extremely qualified to be to help guide the mission during this critical month. Yes, sir.
Thanks.
No.
Hi, Stéphane. Vladimir Kosterev, TASS. What's UN opinion on the tomorrow's meeting between Putin and Biden, and generally, do UN see any signs of do you think it's possible there could be an open conflict around Ukraine?
Well,
Thanks.
I think the phone call, as I understand, that it's a virtual meeting that will take place between the presidents of the Russian Federation and the United States, is extremely important given the current context of what we see going on in many parts of the world. Cooperation and open dialogue between these two permanent members of the Security Council is something that is important, we feel, and we hope, what we hope to see, whether it's a direct outcome of the call or in the coming weeks, is movements towards de-escalation of tensions, notably around the Ukraine issue.
Thank you. Are you planning to open the gift stores in the UN or the delegates lounge? Thank you.
My birthday is August 20th.
Oh.
So we hope to have it open before then. No,
Oh,
my
August,
understanding is that they
okay.
are open. They're open as of today. Gift shop, bookshop, and post office. Okay, well, let's see. It's supposed to be open. Madame.
Me?
Yeah, you.
What about the bar? But yeah, I mean, we need it. Come on.
That is true. I'll find out. Maybe before my birthday. Yes.
Sorry, maybe I missed something. That means tourists can come to the United Nations again.
Yes, you did miss something. We announced last week that the tours have reopened. Following, we will be obviously following very strictly the New York City COVID guidelines for these sorts of things. There'll be a limited number of tours Monday through Friday, I think 10 a.m. to 5 p.m., and you can only book online.
What about civil society in the building?
Civil society will come back, if I'm not mistaken, as of January 1st. They have all been made aware, and arrangements for updating passes and things are currently ongoing. Okay, Paulina, all yours.